Some rooms are not built for conversation. They are built for combat. The congressional hearing room is one of those places, a coliseum of polished mahogany and cold marble, where laws are forged and legacies are shattered. The air itself feels heavy, thick with the ghosts of 1,000 dead arguments and the stifling, silent weight of American history. It is a stage meticulously designed to radiate power, to make witnesses feel small and the members seated on the dais feel mighty. And on this stage, no one plays the part of the gladiator with more ferocious, practiced intensity than the man who now seizes the microphone. He is a predator who knows this territory is his. His entire being is a coiled spring of aggression, his voice a weapon he has used to shout down, intimidate, and politically eviscerate opponent after opponent. He has a simple strategy that has rarely failed him. Be the loudest, be the angriest, and never, ever let them finish a sentence. He is the storm, and for years everyone in Washington has learned to seek shelter when he begins to rage. But today, sitting in the eye of that storm, is a figure of profound, almost unnerving calm. Jasmine Crockett watches him not with fear, but with the quiet analytical focus of a grandmaster studying a chessboard. While he prepares for a brawl, she has prepared for a diagnosis. The room, packed with staffers, reporters, and spectators, holds its collective breath. A low hum of anticipation fills the chamber. This is the moment the cameras have been waiting for. This is the conflict the cable news bookers have been dreaming of. He clears his throat, a theatrical rumble designed to command attention, and fixes her with a condescending glare. He doesn't ask about the law. He doesn't ask about the facts. He goes somewhere lower, somewhere more personal. He attacks her very presence. "Let's be honest," he begins, his voice dripping with a thick, dismissive contempt that is itself a form of violence. "You're a little out of your league here, aren't you?" The question hangs in the air, sharp and ugly. A quiet gasp ripples through the rows of spectators. He smirks, a glint of cruel satisfaction in his eyes. He isn't finished. He leans closer to the microphone, wanting to make sure every syllable is captured for the clip. "Perhaps you could explain to all of us what someone with your background could possibly understand about the immense complexities we are discussing here today." The insult lands. It is a masterclass in political poison, a sentence loaded with unspoken barbs about race, about class, about legitimacy. It is designed to do one thing: provoke an emotional reaction. He waits for the anger, the tears, the flustered defense he feeds on. He is ready to pounce on any sign of weakness. Instead, he gets silence. A silence so deep and so solid it seems to push back against his noise. A silence that doesn't feel like fear, but like power held in reserve. Jasmine Crockett does not flinch. Her expression does not change. She simply picks up her pen from the table. She clicks it once, a small, sharp sound that echoes like a gunshot in the suddenly quiet room, and makes a single deliberate note on her legal pad. The battle had begun. But in that deafening silence, punctuated by the single click of a pen, it became terrifyingly clear to everyone watching that this was not going to be the fight that Jim Jordan had planned. That single, deliberate click of a pen wasn't just a response. It was an answer. It was an answer to a question that had been raging just beneath the surface of American politics for months, a question that had left the country exhausted and divided. That hearing room, on that specific day, had become the epicenter of a bitter, all-consuming war over the very nature of reality itself. At stake was something far more profound than a single piece of legislation or a minor political appointment. The true battle was for the soul of public discourse. Who gets to define truth in the 21st century? Is it the person with the verifiable evidence, the carefully assembled facts, and a solemn respect for the institution in which they sit? Or is it the person with the biggest microphone, the most theatrical outrage, and the most cynical disregard for the process? This was the question, and the entire nation was leaning in, waiting for a verdict. For weeks, the national conversation had been deliberately poisoned. It was a strategy of chaos, a political doctrine that believes if you throw enough mud, everyone looks dirty. The airwaves were choked with disinformation, the internet flooded with accusations and counter-accusations, all of it designed to achieve one specific, corrosive goal: to make good people tune out, to make them believe that politics is just a dirty game, that both sides are just as bad, and that the truth itself is simply unknowable, lost in an impenetrable fog of partisan rage. This hearing was meant to be the final, triumphant act of that cynical strategy. It was scripted to be a chaotic, made-for-television spectacle, a grand finale of political theater that would leave the American public more divided, more confused, and more certain than ever that their government was broken beyond repair. And the designated ringmaster of this circus had arrived with a clear and brutally simple objective. Jim Jordan did not come to that hearing armed with questions, he came armed with sound bites. His goal was not to uncover facts, but to create a viral moment of pure, uncut conflict. He needed a clip of his opponent looking weak, flustered, and cornered, a clip he could blast out to his followers as proof of his strength, a clip that the cable news shows would play on a loop for the next 48 hours. It's a strategy that runs on the high-octane fuel of raw emotion, not the slow-burning energy of evidence. The substance of the issue was completely irrelevant. The only thing that mattered was the performance of dominance. The insult, the condescending tone, the personal attack on her background, it was all part of the script. He was an actor playing the part of an investigator, and he expected his scene partner to give him the emotional reaction his scene required. He was there to produce a 3-minute blockbuster of political outrage. But Jasmine Crockett hadn't come to be an actor in his movie. She had come to be a lawyer in a courtroom. Her objective was the polar opposite of his. She wasn't there to add to the noise. She was there to slice through it with the clean, sharp, unforgiving edge of the law. She understood a fundamental principle that Jordan's entire career seemed to ignore, that in the chaos of modern political theater, the most powerful weapon isn't a louder voice, but a clearer one. She wasn't playing for the rolling cameras. She was playing for the permanent, unchangeable historical record. She was there to build a case, brick by methodical brick, establishing a foundation of truth so solid and so carefully constructed that no amount of angry shouting could ever tear it down. She knew this fight wasn't just about this single hearing or this single arrogant man. It was a fight to defend the very idea that facts are not and never can be partisan. It was about proving that our institutions were still stronger than the egos of the men trying to tear them down. Jordan thought he was setting a familiar political trap. He saw a freshman congresswoman, a woman of color from Texas, and he assumed he knew the script by heart. He assumed his usual tactics of intimidation and condescension would work as they had so many times before. But he failed to realize one crucial, devastating detail about the woman sitting across from him. He had spent his entire career learning how to brawl with other politicians. He had no idea what it meant to face a prosecutor, to truly understand the arrogance of that moment. To grasp the sheer hubristic miscalculation that was about to unfold, you have to first understand the man. You have to understand the brand he so carefully built, not on a foundation of policy or legislative achievement, but on a mastery of political pugilism. His career wasn't about the quiet, unglamorous work of legislating. It was about the loud, televised spectacle of litigating in the court of public opinion, where he was the self-appointed prosecutor, judge, and jury. He rose to power by transforming the solemn halls of Congress from chambers of deliberation into televised cage matches, and for years he was the undisputed heavyweight champion. His entire approach became a predictable, yet brutally effective cocktail of performative aggression, strategic interruption, and weaponized indignation. He never came to a hearing to listen. He came to conquer. The truth was never the objective. Victory was. And victory, for him, was defined by one thing: dominating the narrative and producing a compelling clip for the evening news. Watch the tape from a dozen other hearings, and the pattern becomes as clear and undeniable as a fingerprint. It's a masterclass in controlled chaos, a piece of political theater performed in 3 acts. Act 1. The costume. The jacket is famously, almost ritually, removed. The sleeves are rolled up. This is not a casual gesture. It is a deliberate visual cue, a piece of political stagecraft meticulously designed to signal to his audience that he's not a creature of the Washington bureaucracy, not some soft-handed intellectual. He's a fighter, a brawler, ready to get his hands dirty for the people. Act 2. The attack. He hijacks a witness's time, not with a simple question, but with a sprawling, accusation-laden monologue disguised as one. He weaves together innuendo, conspiracy, and outrage into a tangled web, and just as the witness opens their mouth to try and untangle it, he interrupts. He cuts them off, he talks over them. He points to the clock that is ticking down on their time, not his. He leaves them silenced, frustrated, and him in total control of the exchange. Act 3. The pivot. If a direct question is ever posed to him, one that requires a simple, factual answer, the pivot is immediate and masterful. He doesn't answer it. He attacks the premise of the question. He attacks the motive of the questioner. He launches into a well-rehearsed tirade on a completely different subject, a rhetorical technique known as the Gish Gallop, a fire hose of half-truths, whataboutisms, and red herrings so overwhelming that it's impossible to fact-check or rebut in real time. The goal is simple: to bury his opponent under an avalanche of pure noise, to leave them looking stunned and helpless while he stands atop the rubble, the undisputed victor. For years, this strategy of brute force was devastatingly effective. It made him a political star, a feared interrogator who could chew up and spit out even the most seasoned Washington operatives. It electrified his base, who saw him as their fighter, their champion, their gladiator, willing to go into the arena and slay their political dragons. He became a symbol of relentless, unyielding opposition, a man who treated every single hearing as the final, decisive battle in a grand war for the nation's soul. He built an empire on the currency of confrontation. He had grown so accustomed to winning these brawls against other politicians, against activists, against anyone who played by the unwritten rules of political theater, that he started to believe his own hype. He started to believe that his way of fighting was the only way, that his tactics were invincible, that his brand of aggressive certainty was a substitute for actual knowledge. But this entire method, this entire career, this entire empire of noise was built upon a single, fatal flaw: the blinding arrogance of assuming that every fight is a political one. His style was perfectly calibrated for the chaotic, emotional energy of a cable news panel or a campaign rally, where passion is far more persuasive than precision. He had grown so comfortable brawling that he forgot other kinds of fighters even exist. His greatest weapon, the overwhelming, undisciplined, chaotic verbal assault, is the very thing that would get a lawyer thrown out of a real courtroom in a heartbeat. The methodical, evidence-based, ruthlessly logical world of the law is immune to his brand of chaos. In a courtroom, bluster is not evidence. Interrupting a witness gets you a sharp rebuke from the judge. Dodging a direct question doesn't make you look strong. It utterly destroys your credibility before the jury. He had walked into that hearing room assuming it was his stage, his arena, his kingdom. He failed to realize he had just walked into a jurisdiction where he held no power, where his tactics were useless, and where he was about to be treated not like a powerful congressman, but like a hostile witness on the stand. On the other side of that dais, forged in a completely different and far more unforgiving American fire, sat a woman whose career was not measured in sound bites, but in human lives. While some build their political resumes in the polished, performative world of Washington, D.C., trading favors and honing talking points, Jasmine Crockett built hers in the trenches. before she was Congresswoman Crockett, she was a public defender. She was a civil rights attorney. Her arena was not the cable news green room or the donor cocktail party. It was the stark, fluorescent-lit, unforgiving reality of the county courthouse. Her clients were not lobbyists and corporate executives. They were the forgotten, the voiceless, the accused, and the railroaded. People for whom the noble phrase, "justice for all," often felt like a distant, cruel joke. This wasn't a job she simply fell into. It was a calling. She answered, a path she chose, driven by a fierce, unwavering belief that the quality of justice a person receives should not be determined by the amount of money in their bank account, the zip code they live in, or the color of their skin. She chose to stand as the last line of defense between an individual and the crushing, immense power of a system that is often built to chew them up and spit them out. That choice, made day after day, year after year, builds a different kind of armor. It forges a different kind of strength. This is a world that does not reward theatrics. It ruthlessly punishes them. It's a world of impossibly long nights spent poring over thousands upon thousands of pages of discovery, your eyes burning as you search for the one small inconsistency, the one overlooked legal precedent, the one thread of exculpatory evidence that could mean the difference between a life of freedom and a life in a cage. It's a world of standing before a judge and a jury, the entire future of your client resting on your shoulders and facing down seasoned prosecutors who have the full, awesome power of the state at their back. It's the world of looking those powerful prosecutors in the eye and telling them, with quiet, unshakable conviction, "No, you are wrong, and I am going to prove it." The bullies she faced in the courtroom were not the performative kind found on Capitol Hill, who trade insults for the camera before having a friendly drink later. They were cold, methodical professionals seeking maximum sentences, backed by powerful corporations with armies of lawyers and entrenched systems of bias that had stood for generations. They were bullies who wielded not just loud voices, but the very real power to destroy a family. In that world, the rules of engagement are the polar opposite of Jim Jordan's. Shouting gets you nowhere. Uncontrolled aggression is a fatal sign of weakness, a clear signal to the judge and jury that you've lost control of the facts and are resorting to emotion. The only way to win in that arena wasn't to be louder. It was to be smarter. It was to be better. It was to know the case file so intimately that you could recite it from memory, forwards and backwards. It was to understand the law so thoroughly that you could dismantle your opponent's entire argument with a single, perfectly timed, surgically precise question. It was to remain unflappably, almost unnaturally calm while your opponent tried every trick in the book to rattle you, to provoke you, to make you lose your cool, because you knew, with absolute certainty, that your composure was your greatest weapon and your client's last and best hope. That steely, quiet confidence, that profound calm that so clearly unnerved Jim Jordan, wasn't a political strategy cooked up for the hearing. It was a survival mechanism, honed over thousands of hours of real-world, high-stakes legal combat. The manufactured pressure of a congressional hearing is nothing compared to the bone-deep pressure of a jury filing back into the box, their verdict holding a human being's future in their hands. The empty blustering of a politician is a child's game compared to the methodical, strategic attack of a prosecutor who wants to put your client away for the rest of their life. Her composure was earned in the fire of consequence. Her precision was practiced in the pursuit of justice. Her refusal to be intimidated was not a choice she made for the cameras. It was the very core of her professional identity, the unshakable foundation upon which her entire career had been painstakingly built. She had learned long ago how to fight and how to win, not by being the loudest person in the room, but by being the most prepared. Every single case she had ever fought, every arrogant prosecutor she had ever faced down, every complex legal argument she had ever dismantled, and every bully she had ever silenced not with volume but with facts, had been a dress rehearsal. They had all been training for this very moment. and the curtain was about to rise on a performance Jim Jordan would never forget. And so, we returned to the hearing room, the heavy silence finally broken by the sharp, authoritative slam of a gavel. The board has been set, the pieces are in place, and now the game truly begins. This is the moment Jim Jordan lives for. Her quiet defiance, her refusal to take his condescending bait, is not something he processes as strength. His arrogance will not allow it. He sees it as fear. He sees an opponent who is stunned, out of her depth, and ready to be broken. He believes his opening insult has rattled her, and now is the time to press his advantage. And so he seizes the floor to deliver what he is certain will be the finishing blow, unleashing the full, ferocious force of his practiced chaos. It's not a line of questioning. It's an ambush. It is a dizzying, breathtaking monologue, a blizzard of accusations wrapped in complex, legal-sounding jargon, all of it spoken at a speed deliberately calibrated to prevent interruption or real-time fact-checking. He weaves a tangled, venomous web of innuendo, misdirection, and outright falsehoods, a narrative designed not to uncover information, but to create a suffocating fog of confusion and suspicion. He is a master of this dark art, throwing so much mud in so short a time that he knows his target will inevitably be covered in it, regardless of the truth. He connects unrelated events with sinister-sounding language, implies corrupt motives without a shred of evidence, and frames his entire tirade as a patriot's last, desperate stand against a vast, shadowy conspiracy. It is a symphony of pure, unadulterated political performance, and he is its conductor, its composer, and its lead soloist. His physical demeanor is a show in itself. He's out of his chair, leaning so far into the microphone that it seems he might swallow it whole. His voice, already loud, climbs in pitch and volume with each escalating charge, a crescendo of manufactured outrage designed to command the attention of every camera in the room. A finger jabs the air, punctuating points that don't need evidence because they are delivered with such absolute, aggressive certainty. He is a storm of motion and noise, a whirlwind of righteous indignation, and his entire focus is narrowed down to the still, silent figure seated across from him. He is pouring every ounce of his political brand, his entire strategy of overwhelming force, onto this one, single target. And in the face of this astonishing, relentless onslaught, Jasmine Crockett does nothing. Nothing at all. She doesn't interrupt. She doesn't object. She doesn't sigh in frustration or roll her eyes at the blatant theatrics. She simply sits, her posture perfect, her spine straight, her eyes locked on his. While he flails and rages, she is a portrait of impossible stillness. Her expression is a mask of calm, professional focus, betraying no fear, no anger, not even a flicker of annoyance. The only movement is her hand, gliding a pen across a legal pad with a steady, unhurried, methodical rhythm. She isn't cowering from the storm. She is calmly taking notes in the eye of the hurricane, cataloging every lie, every misdirection, every logical fallacy with the dispassionate precision of a court stenographer gathering evidence for the prosecution. The tension in the room becomes a physical presence. Other members of the committee sit frozen, watching this bizarre, one-sided spectacle unfold. The clicking of camera shutters is the only sound that dares to compete with Jordan's voice. Across the country, people watching on their phones and laptops lean closer to their screens, feeling the immense pressure building. This is what it looks like when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. He is giving it everything he has, and she is simply absorbing it all, refusing to give him the emotional reaction he so desperately needs to make his performance a success. He barrels towards his grand finale, landing on one final, explosive accusation. He delivers it with a triumphant flourish, the supposed knockout blow. He then falls silent, dropping back into his chair with a smug, satisfied look spreading across his face. He'd done it. He'd created his clip. He'd cornered her, buried her under an avalanche of his own making. The room was electric with tension. He waited for the inevitable crumble, the flustered defense that would prove his dominance. But what came next wasn't a defense. It was a dissection. Jasmine Crockett rises. A profound hush falls over the committee room, a silence born not of decorum, but of pure electric anticipation. Every eye is on her. Every camera lens is focused. Every microphone is live, waiting for the inevitable explosion. The world expected a defense, a fiery rebuttal, a passionate speech matching the fury she had just endured. They expected her to play his game, to step down into the political mud pit he had so carefully prepared for her. They were wrong. She adjusts the microphone, not with a shaking hand, but with the steady, deliberate calm of a surgeon picking up a scalpel. She looks across the dais, her gaze bypassing the politician entirely, and locks onto the witness whose testimony is about to be systematically and irrevocably dismantled. In that moment, the Congresswoman recedes, and the prosecutor takes her place. Her voice, when it comes, is not loud, it is not angry, it is something far more devastating. It is quiet, it is clear, and it is surgically precise. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," she begins, her tone perfectly even, betraying no hint of the venom that had just been spewed at her. She does not address the substance of his wild, rambling accusations. She simply ignores them, treating the entire monologue as the irrelevant noise it truly is, unworthy of a direct response. Instead, she looks directly at Jim Jordan, and with her first sentence, the entire hearing transforms from a political theater into a courtroom. I just have a few simple questions to clarify the foundation of the gentleman's argument. For the record, she pauses, a masterful use of silence, letting it hang heavy in the air, creating a vacuum where his storm of bluster had just been. "Question 1, she says, and the words land with the unimpeachable weight of a judge's gavel. "You have repeatedly and forcefully used the term conspiracy in your remarks. For the benefit of the committee and the American people watching, could you please explain the basic legal elements required to prove a conspiracy under federal law?" It's a simple question. Law 101. A question anyone who throws that word around with such righteous authority should be able to answer in their sleep. But Jim Jordan is frozen. A look of profound, almost comical confusion washes over his face. This wasn't in the script. He was prepared for a fight, not an exam. He opens his mouth, stammers, starts a sentence, then stops. He tries to pivot, to deflect back to the safety of his original talking points. Look, what we're talking about here is the clear coordination, the obvious, the plan that they had. Crockett does not raise her voice. She doesn't have to. She gently, but with the unyielding firmness of a master litigator, cuts him off. "Respectfully, sir, that was not my question. I didn't ask for your interpretation. The question was a simple one. What are the legal elements of a conspiracy? You have based your entire line of reasoning on this specific legal term. Surely you can tell the committee what it actually means." The camera zooms in on Jordan's face. The smug confidence is completely gone, replaced by a flicker of raw, undisguised panic. His eyes dart over to his staff, seated behind him, a desperate, searching glance for a lifeline that isn't there. They shuffle papers, their eyes suddenly finding the floor intensely interesting, unable to help him. The silence in the room stretches, becoming thick, uncomfortable, and more damning than any shouted accusation could ever be. He is a warrior who has brought a battering ram to a duel of wits, and he is only now realizing his catastrophic mistake. He finally manages to cobble together a pathetic non-answer, a word salad of political buzzwords that carefully, almost skillfully, avoids the actual question. Jasmine Crockett lets his empty answer hang in the air, its inadequacy echoing through the silent room. She doesn't mock him. She doesn't celebrate her small victory. She simply proceeds, her composure a pillar of steel. "All right," she says, making a small note on her legal pad as if logging a piece of faulty evidence. "Let me try another way. you've also made very serious claims regarding obstruction. For the record, can you please tell us the legal distinction between obstruction of justice and obstruction of Congress? As you've alleged both, the distinction seems critical to your argument. Another simple question, another devastating surgical blow. The panic on Jordan's face is now unmistakable. This is no longer a political debate. It is a public vivisection of his own glaring ignorance broadcast on national television. He came to this fight armed with nothing but outrage, and she has revealed with two simple questions that he is, in fact, armed with nothing at all. He attempts one last deflection, this time with a surge of anger, a desperate attempt to reignite the chaos that is his only comfort zone. This is ridiculous. We're here to talk about the facts, not play some kind of gotcha legal game. Sir, Crockett replies, her voice still a pillar of unshakable calm in his manufactured storm. These are the facts. The legal definitions of the very crimes you allege are the most fundamental facts of all. If you don't understand what the words you are using mean, then how can anyone in this room or in this country possibly take your accusations seriously? And that is the moment. The precise instant the power dynamic in the room doesn't just shift, it shatters into a million pieces and reforms around her. He is no longer the aggressor, he is the one being cornered, exposed, and humiliated. His loud, angry silence is the only answer he has left. He slumps in his chair, utterly and completely defeated. In that profound, damning silence, the room and the world watching understood. This wasn't a debate, it was a competency hearing, and the self-proclaimed prosecutor was failing. The man who had built a celebrated career on noise has been single-handedly destroyed by his own quiet inability to answer a simple, honest question. The room was silent. The ticking of the clock on the wall was the only sound. Jasmine Crockett didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She had laid bare a simple, devastating, and inescapable truth. The emperor had no clothes. Before the gavel had even officially ended the session, it had already begun. A staffer, a reporter, someone in the room with a phone and a fast connection, hit upload. A 2-minute clip, raw and unedited, was fired into the digital ether. It landed not like a drop in the ocean, but like a lightning strike on a dry prairie. In the first 10 minutes, it had 1,000 views. An hour later, 1,000,000. By nightfall, it was the single most watched video on the planet, a dry congressional hearing transformed into a piece of must-see global theater. The Internet, a machine normally built for chaos, distraction, and division, suddenly found a moment of breathtaking clarity. Its focus for one perfect day was lasered in on the public, silent humiliation of a man who had built his entire brand on the belief that he was untouchable. The first wave of reaction was pure, unadulterated, and joyous. The hashtag exploded first. Crockett cross-exam. It was simple, it was accurate, and it became a digital rallying cry, trending worldwide within hours. Then came the memes, the Internet's native art form of instant commentary. 1,000 variations of Jim Jordan's face, a perfect mask of panicked confusion, were plastered next to images of chess grandmasters, courtroom judges, and the cover of Law for Dummies. GIFs of Jasmine Crockett calmly taking notes while he raged were captioned with a single, perfect word: unbothered. The digital world didn't just share the moment. It remixed it, it celebrated it, and it turned it into a cultural artifact, a modern David and Goliath story told in pixels and hashtags. It was the Internet's revenge on every bully who had ever mistaken silence for weakness. But beneath the humor and the memes, a deeper, more powerful current was flowing. This was a moment of profound, collective catharsis. Across the country, law students paused their lectures, gathered around laptops in university libraries, and watched in professional awe. "That's not a debate," one of them typed in a group chat that was blowing up. "That's a flawless execution of a voir dire. She's establishing he's not a competent witness to his own argument before she even touches the substance. In living rooms, people who had grown exhausted by the endless political shouting matches, who had almost lost faith in the system's ability to function, suddenly stood up and cheered at their television screens, a dam of pent-up frustration finally breaking. For every person who had ever been talked over in a meeting, for every woman who had been told she was too emotional when she was simply being passionate, for every individual who had faced down an arrogant bully and wished they had the perfect words, this was a moment of supreme, vicarious triumph. They weren't just watching a congresswoman, they were watching their champion. Then came the second, more formal wave, the validation of the experts. Legal analysts from every major network went on air, their faces lit with undisguised professional admiration, breaking down her cross-examination frame by meticulous frame. This wasn't politics, one former federal prosecutor explained to a primetime audience, her voice full of respect. This was a surgical procedure, and Representative Crockett had the scalpel. She didn't attack his argument, she removed its foundation, and the whole thing collapsed on its own. Seasoned political commentators, usually jaded and cynical, spoke of her grace under fire, her masterclass in preparation. The narrative was solidified, cemented in the public consciousness. This wasn't a lucky punch, it was the inevitable, predictable result of a prepared mind meeting an empty suit. The media framed it not as a squabble, but as a demolition. The headlines wrote themselves, how two simple questions exposed a political emperor, a lawyer in a room full of politicians, and the takedown he heard round the world. It was more than a viral moment, it was a movement. For a country starved of substance and choking on noise, this was a symbol that facts still mattered, that preparation still mattered, that dignity was still a superpower. It was a baptism by fire, and through it, Jasmine Crockett had emerged as more than a congresswoman. She became a symbol of a different kind of power. Not the power of the loudest voice, but the power of the most intelligent one. When the deafening noise of a viral moment finally fades, what is left behind? The hashtags disappear, the memes are replaced by new ones, and the great churning outrage machine of the internet moves on to its next target. But this moment left something different in its wake. It left a lesson. To understand what truly happened in that room, you have to look past the takedown and see the quiet, profound restoration that was taking place. This was never really about the humiliation of one man, however satisfying that might have been. It was about the powerful, unwavering defense of an ideal. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just exposing Jim Jordan's ignorance for the world to see. She was holding a mirror up to a broken political system, a system that has increasingly and disastrously rewarded the loudest and most aggressive voices while punishing those who engage in the quiet, difficult, essential work of governing. For years, the American people have been told that this is just how politics is now, a blood sport, a reality show, a constant war for camera time where victory is measured not in progress for the country, but in retweets and cable news hits. The hearing room, a space designed for the solemn, critical work of oversight and accountability, had been degraded into just another stage for this cynical performance. What Jasmine Crockett did was not just a brilliant act of legal maneuvering, it was a profound act of public service. With her calm, methodical, and devastatingly simple questions, she was cleansing the room of its cheap theatrics. She was reconsecrating it to its original, noble purpose, the pursuit of truth. She was reminding everyone watching, from the powerful halls of Washington, D.C., to the small towns across the country, that the foundation of our democracy is not built on bluster, but on a shared, unwavering respect for facts, for evidence, and for the rule of law. Her actions were a powerful declaration of a set of values that many feared were lost forever in the modern political circus. She proved, in real time, that preparation is the ultimate weapon, that knowing your subject inside and out is infinitely more powerful than shouting down your opponent. She demonstrated that truth, when wielded with precision and skill, needs no embellishment and requires no increase in volume to be devastatingly effective. And, above all, she embodied the unshakable power of dignity. In the face of a raw, undisciplined, and deeply disrespectful assault, she refused to lower herself. She refused to get in the mud with him. She showed a watching world that you can fight and you can win without sacrificing 1 ounce of your integrity. This was a masterclass not just in law, but in leadership. It was a beacon for anyone who believes that our leaders should be measured not by the enemies they create, but by the principles they defend. In the end, this was never about right versus left. It was about right versus wrong. It was about substance versus style. It was a clear and undeniable reminder that in the halls of power and in the courtroom of life, the loudest voice doesn't win the argument. The most prepared one does. And so, the verdict is in. The case is closed. Jasmine Crockett destroyed Jim Jordan on live TV, but not with the weapons he expected. She didn't use volume. She didn't use insults. She didn't use outrage. She used the one weapon he had left completely and utterly undefended: his own ignorance. She proved that the politics of aggression, the style of performative anger that has dominated our screens for so long, has a fatal, hollow core. It is a house of cards that collapses the moment it is met with the quiet, unshakable force of actual knowledge. This was more than just a victory in a hearing. It was a moral victory for a country hungry for a different kind of leadership. It was a demonstration of the quiet strength, the profound dignity, and the intellectual rigor that we should not only hope for, but demand from all of our elected officials. It proves that the American people are not just an audience looking for a show. They are a jury, waiting to be convinced by the evidence. The question now is, what will we do with that verdict? If you believe that integrity and truth should be our leaders' sharpest weapons, then don't just like this video. Subscribe and share this story. Let's be part of the movement that decides to change the channel from the politics of noise to the politics of substance. Let's not just ask for better arguments from our leaders. Let's demand answers.